could be fast or slow, it doesn't matter, as long as it makes you want to dance to it or groove to it. But where does this tradition of using a drum beat come from? Today, I'm going to talk about the birth, the life, and the legacy of the Roland TR-808 drum machine. Now, this may sound like a eulogy, but I assure you it's not. The TR-808 has formed some of the roots of music culture as we know it today, introducing the sounds that many underground artists have used to create and develop what we now know as hip-hop. The following information has been sourced from various articles, journals, and even a documentary centered around the 808. Now let me take you back to the 1980s when technology was just on its rise. Ikutaro Kakahashi founded the Roland Corporation in 1972. Now Roland was pretty small compared to other instrument companies such as Steinway, Yamaha, or Kawai. But Kakahashi cleverly found his way into the competition, selling electronic instruments, which none of the others did. In 1980, he released the Roland TR-808 drum machine, which electronically mimicked the sounds of various percussion instruments, such as the drum bass. Oh, that was a cowbell. And the snare. Artists can make their own rhythms with these beats, as complex as they'd like, with the interface shown. But there was a problem. The sounds that this machine made were too electronic and artificial. In the popular music journal titled The Groove in the Box, Axel Joa quotes that the drum sounds that such machines made only resembled actual drum sounds. And the TR-808 lost much of its popularity and ended up in pawn shops. In fact, only 12,000 units were sold before it was discontinued in '83. With the 808's humble beginnings, underground artists started getting their hands on this magical box. Musically, the 80s was a time of experimentation. Everyone loved the funky beat that you could get down to. As a genre, hip-hop was one of these experiments, and it originated from the Bronx of New York, amongst all the violence and gang activity. However, in Rebels Without a Pause, Martin Lamotte writes in 2014 that hip-hop emerged and indirectly became a tool for the pacification of the South Bronx area. The 808, being cheap, was a hip-hop go-to. So, South Bronx DJ Africa Bambaataa became the first to release a hit using the 808 sounds. The hit was called Planet Rock, and it featured a low-end bass, which was unheard of at the time. And on top of that, it was at a tempo of 120 beats per minute, which was fast but easily done with an 808 machine. And it went a little something like this. Oh. After Planet Rock, many other artists wanted to get their hands on this sound. That undeniable bass became a growing trend among upcoming hip-hop. Now, from the 808's birth and life, and into its legacy now in the modern age, it's clear that hip-hop had clung on to this sound. The sounds were well embedded and found in many rap lyrics and in the foundations of many hip-hop songs. One of the most famous uses of the 808 was in Kanye West's album, 808s and Heartbreak, which featured many electronic sounds, auto-tune, and of course, 808 beats. In the night, I hear him talk, the coldest story ever told. Somewhere far along this road, he lost his soul. Of course, other genres were influenced by the 808 as well. Zainab Hussain, in the 2017 article on The Verge, quotes that the 808 was so adaptable that it was like the first open source sound in which artists built upon each other's interpretations and made it their own. A 2015 documentary was made centered around the 808, in which producers Arthur Baker, Alex Dunn, and others interviewed actual artists that used the 808, including Bambaataa himself. During the documentary, Bambaataa quotes that the 808 gave extra funk to the record, that soulful bass bottom that was needed. Now, having gone through the 808's birth, life, and now legacy, we see why it's so remembered today. The music industry would obviously not be the same without it. And Kakahashi, although he's not alive today, his legacy certainly lives on. The hardware, although it's clearly outdated, the sounds are still found in many digital synthesizers and modern beat production software in many computers today. That signature 808 sound, that drum bass and that snare that Kakahashi introduced to the US in 1980, he sparked a movement with that he may have never anticipated. And the sounds that he gave to us are still heard today throughout the decades.
And ironically, as commercially unsuccessful as this product was when he first introduced it, the TR-808 helped build the foundation of hip-hop and modern music as we know today.